All right, so hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate America Saves Week as we talk about saving at any age, motherhood, and generational wealth. My name is Olivia, and I am the coordinator for YWCA in Phoenix's Prosperity Program. I'm also a little under the weather, so apologies if I'm coughing or sound a little odd. um, the Prosperity Program at YWCA, we offer financial education classes, mental wellness classes, and civic engagement classes as well. And I'm joined by two of our volunteers from our Prosperity Program today. Maria might be joining us in a minute as well, so she'll pop off in a second. But I will let Io and Rachel go ahead and introduce themselves. And Io, how about you go first, and you can introduce yourself, your background, what makes you a mom, and maybe something that you like to do for fun.
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks, Olivia. So my name is Io Jordan Jones. A little bit about me. From a professional standpoint, I've worked in various spaces within the financial services industry for over 30 years. So yes, I'm not 30, sorry, spoiler alert, but maybe 35. My entry into the financial services industry was in banking as a teller, customer service rep. I moved from there into the personal insurance industry for the longest span of my career. And then since then, I made a few intentional career moves to navigate my way into the corporate insurance, risk management, and regulatory oversight and supervision spaces, but back within the banking space. So as far as an educational background, I have an MBA from Texas Women's University, a Bachelor's of Business Administration and Accounting with double majors in accounting and finance from the University of Oklahoma. I am a CPA licensed in Texas and Arizona, and I hold several professional designations within those different industries that I've worked. So I've made my way around the financial services industry, so I hope that I have some insightful things to share today. From a personal standpoint, I'm very passionate about just having fun, engaging with people, educating, giving back, sharing knowledge and experiences forward to empower others to grow and thrive. I've been partnering with the YWCA Phoenix as a speaker and volunteer for about 3 years. So as a financial education program instructor, I facilitate financial education workshops to empower women to be financially independent. I teach various courses within the YWCA's curriculum that cover savings, budgeting, understanding credit and debt, insurance, and home ownership. So that's kind of the span of my experience or how it's applicable here today. Who makes me a mom? I've been blessed to be a mom since the age of 18. I have a wonderful son named Dante, and I later married, so that gives us a blended family, and we actually have 3 children who are all of adult age at this point. For fun, I love to travel. I love to attend live music events, going to a concert tonight, and I enjoy sports pretty much of any kind in my free time. So just really anything that allows me to just connect with people and just embrace and learn about different people and different cultures. So super excited to be here, be a part of this panel discussion, and thank you everybody who has joined and who is going to spend some time with us today.
I'll pass it over to Rachel.
Hey guys, I'm Rachel Caballero. I am currently the Community Development and PR Manager at True West Credit Union. I have been with the credit union for almost 18 years in capacity from a teller to branch manager to contact center manager and now working in marketing. My job entails going out and teaching financial education to our members, to our community, obviously through YWCA. And I got my start volunteering there several years ago as well as a prosperity coach because I was a single mom and I have a biracial daughter and I wanted to bring her up with the independence and confidence to be strong in all of the things that she needed to be strong in and to be able to fight for her rights and for herself. And so that's how I got started with YWCA and has just continue to go from there. I absolutely love volunteering with them and with different nonprofits throughout the community. In true mom fashion, right? What mom doesn't have their 6-year-old around their neck? So I got blessed with my daughter after years and years of trying 6 years ago. Her name is AC. And then a few years ago, I also got blessed with a bonus son. So we are also a blended family, born and raised in Mesa, Arizona. I now live in Gilbert. For fun, I love spending time with my family and I love traveling, which is awesome because I despise flying. Flying terrifies me, but I love culture and I love food and I love all things beaches. So I travel quite a bit and try to do that whenever I can. And I don't think there's anything else you need to know about me that you're not going to find out through the panel and through the discussion. So thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. And if anyone in the audience has any questions during, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can ask our volunteers and to answer them. So we'll go ahead and start with the first question, which is how was money discussed in your household growing up versus how you discuss money in your household now? And I'll send that over to Rachel first.
Okay, so money wasn't discussed in my household. Growing up, money was a very taboo subject. It was discussed behind closed doors, between the parents only. It wasn't something that the kids needed to get themselves involved in, whether it was good or bad. I grew up in poverty. We lived in somebody's tool shed behind their house. And so money was always a constant concern in my family. And we knew what was being talked about, but it wasn't out in the open. Today, I run my household very, very differently. I was just discussing with Allie, who's on the call, that I went to the kids' book fair last night and they had gotten money for Easter. And so we sat down and, okay, let's set a budget for this book fair. How much are you going to put in from your Easter bunny money? And then how much am I going to put in? So we're very intentional in having those discussions, even with our tiny 6 and 8-year-old who have been learning it since they were 3 and 5. If we want to go on vacation or if the kids want to go to Legoland, we sit down and say, okay, what's something that we can eliminate that you're buying right now so that we can save money as a family to contribute to this family trip. And I think that that's so important to bring them up with strong financial foundations, because the people that grew up in households that didn't discuss this stuff, now we're facing hardships in adulthood. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're having to hire financial counselors to get us out of a bind. We're getting into debt and we can't come out of it because we weren't taught how to do that. So discussing it in our home from a very early age and making it open and known, I think is extremely instrumental in giving our kids the skills that they need to succeed with their finances later in life.
And then Io, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, I agree with Rachel. Growing up, I wouldn't say that money was so much discussed, but it was kind of taught by example. So I would say that, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had everything we needed. I came up in a very strong matriarchal family. So my great-grandmother was probably the most influential person in my life on the subjects of just like family and generational wealth. So I was fortunate to have some good examples, but we weren't discussing it openly. I kind of watched my great-grandmother. I understood the foundation she was laying for the family. My mom was a single mom of 4 children. So I learned firsthand from just, kind of watching her make her way. I was fortunate in the sense that, there was home ownership in my family. So I didn't ever think that, that was within what was something I could not achieve. I always thought it was within reach. You do have to learn the financial steps required to get there. So those are things that you do need to teach. Somebody needs to teach you, or you need to have exposure till you see it, but you don't know how to get it. So, I would say that was the biggest learning point for me was when my great-grandmother started to age. I was fortunate to be the person that she kind of trusted to manage her finances. So that's when I actually started seeing things in different ways that she had planted seeds to build a foundation toward generational wealth for our family. So in this day and age, I agree with Rachel strongly. Like, I have been very, very intentional about teaching and discussing finances with my son from the time of his first quote unquote job. At about 10, he started sweeping up hair in the barbershop where he frequently got haircuts. So I started teaching him financial discipline and responsibility from that point. I mean, he had a savings account. We spent time writing down, what he made, creating a budget, that always included savings and, tithes if you're of any religious perspective. But, it was always, what do you set aside for yourself to build? And then we would keep track of a spending record, which, old school, any of us that opened checking accounts and had a checkbook register, that's how he learned to keep track of his money. And I really wanted him to understand the importance of knowing where you're spending your money and why. We can blow a lot of money, and if you don't watch or write down or not intentional about understanding where it went, you'll lose sight of it, and you will have had a lot of fun, but you will not have built a nest egg or any savings or things of that nature. So, in this day and age, he's actually come back to me and said when he moved out and had his first roommate and was teaching them to build a budget, and he actually came back and he was like, Mom, thank you. He said, I didn't know that I was so financially advanced from other people, because families just don't teach and talk about these things. So, it is very, very important to be intentional about having the discussions and not shy away from money.
Yeah, I wanted to hit on something that you said, Io, with the spending leaks, that so often people come in under budget, and my kiddos just had this lesson last night too, because I said, okay, how much money do you have in your piggy bank? How much did you get from the Easter Bunny? They're like, well, wait a second. I remember I got this much, but I don't have that. Okay, well, what did you spend it on? Well, I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, so those are the spending leaks. You went to the school and you bought a bunch of pencils from the library and you didn't think about it. And then it was Popcorn Friday and you bought a bunch of popcorn for your friends and you didn't think about it. Now you don't have enough money. So we had to shorten the budget a little bit, right? But even in adulthood, understanding and recognizing where those spending leaks are and be able to rein them back so that you do have more to put into savings to create that generational wealth, I think is extremely, extremely essential for anybody that's going to go into starting budgeting, to starting to keep track of their finances, to figure out where all that little stuff is, because it adds up. And they say that right now, on average, people spend about $10,000 a year on those spending leaks. And that is huge, especially to somebody that's got low income that might think right now that they don't have the money to start building for generational wealth. Well, guess what? You might, but you're spending it on stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes discipline and a desire to want to build, because a lot of times we're just having fun, and having fun is a lot more intriguing than the discipline that comes with financial planning.
Thank you both. So our third volunteer, Maria, was able to pop in. So I'll let her introduce herself. So Maria, if you want to introduce yourself, your background, who makes you a mom, and then something like to do for fun. And then I'll repeat the question that Io and Rachel just answered as well.
Perfect. First of all, hi, nice to meet you all. Maria. Sorry I'm in my car. I just didn't want to be any later and I was at work. But my name is Maria del Real. A little bit about my background. I actually graduated with my bachelor's in community advocacy and social policy here in Arizona at Arizona State University. A little bit about my background, funny enough, although I'm really into the social work realm, I don't really work in that realm. I work in finance. I have been in finance for almost 5 years now. So I started really early on. What makes me a mother? Well, I have a almost 4-year-old daughter. I kind of raised her on my own for the first few years. So I feel like the finance, as well with being a parent, is such a topic I'm super passionate about, because I did it alone for a while. And I recently got married and I'm expecting my second baby this summer. So that's a little bit about me in the last few years, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yay, congratulations. So the question that we just asked was, how was money discussed in your household growing up versus how you discuss money in your household now?
Yeah, I love what Rachel and is it Ayo?
Io.
First, sorry about that. I love the conversations they were having, and I agree 100% on a lot of things they were saying. As for me, it was a little bit different. I grew up in a very traditional, like Hispanic household. So my parents were actually both immigrants. So it was really hard in the sense that money never had a positive connotation to it. It was always like bills, stress, bills, like it kind of almost was like a bad thing. Finances were never like discussed in a positive manner. My parents were not very like financially responsible themselves. So for me, that just really created almost like a fear of like, how am I going to manage my finances when I'm older? And we were never really discussed, like, we never knew about savings, never knew about home ownership. I know Io mentioned that that was never a conversation in my house. Nobody in my family ever owned a house, grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents. So for me, it was something that almost seemed unattainable. So I think that was extremely important for me to address when I had my own children. So I know my daughter's only 4, so she's very little. Obviously, the context of how we can speak to her about finances is a little limited now. But she does know about savings, and obviously a little bit like more childish in the sense of like having a piggy bank, understanding what a budget is, and in a kid way, right? So if she gets money, how Rachel was saying, the Easter Bunny is just a perfect example. Recently, she got money from the Easter Bunny and her Easter egg hunt. And in that money, we gave her the option, do you want to save it in your piggy bank, or do you want to go buy yourself something? And she was able to be like, Mommy, it's only $5. I'll put it in my savings. So she understands the value of money and how like, $5, you might as well save it than to buy something you're only going to use once. And I think even at 4 years old, she's extremely knowledgeable in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it. She's not a big spender. When she has her own money, she doesn't want to spend. And so we've kind of taught her early on, like what a savings even is. And she's kind of been able to see like me purchase my own home when I was a single mom. So she understands that we own our home and things like that. And she always, and it's interesting to see, because even at only 4 years old, she's able to say, Mommy, I want to buy a house one day too, or Mommy, I want to save this much money. And she has goals of what she wants to save for, like right now in gymnastics. And it's things that she needs, not really like toys and things like that. Like she wants a gymnastics beam. And so she's saving for that. And at only 4 years old, it's crazy to see like how different it is, because she just got an early introduction to money, although it has to be like age appropriate still. I definitely think it's still possible from a very, very early age.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so much.
cool. I wanted to say a couple of things out of that. That's super cool, Maria. I'm excited to hear that. I mean, at 4, for somebody to not be intimidated by money. And I think that's the key to a lot of it is the bills and the stress is going to come. They're going to learn that. They're going to have to figure out, you have to navigate that as well. But just understanding, that you can make choices with money. Do I spend it? Do I save it? Do I split it? So I think that's amazing that you're already instilling that at such a young age.
Thank you.
Great. So how about Io? I go back to you for our next question. So the next question is about how many times in relationships one partner often can control all of the finances. And it usually is the man in opposite sex relationships. So sometimes women often feel that financial planning is not for them and it's a man's job to do that. So have you had experiences like this? And if you have, what have you learned from them? And then even if you haven't, what would you tell other women for creating a plan for their financial future?
Yeah, no, I like the challenge of kind of talking through this question, just because we have been allowed to kind of disband some stereotypes and thoughts from ages ago. And for me, I guess part of it is I haven't necessarily had this experience because I was a mom at such a young age and originally a single parent. So, I started my financial planning independently. So I've always had ownership really of what my financial plan looks like. And then when I did actually, get married, he respects that I'm probably the financial guru in the family, just by virtue of my background being a CPA, accounting, finance. So we talk through things, so I haven't had that challenge. And just for me, like math was always my favorite subject in school. So learning and understanding money and finances was kind of a genuine interest and a natural fit for me. And from that perspective, my family, my household, they've kind of always looked at me for advice and trusted the guidance in financial planning. But when I have these opportunities, what I try to do is be intentional about teaching. I don't just let people ask, what do you think I should do? Or what would you do? I try to teach them through how to understand and make those decisions on their own and get the confidence to stand on their own 2 feet. So that's what I would really tell women is be courageous about owning your own financial plan and seek opportunities in areas where you're maybe unfamiliar or a little bit intimidated to just start gaining an understanding of how to plan long term. There's so many resources available in this day and age. I mean, free resources like, just like this panel discussion or other webinars and different things through your bank, through your credit union. So it really does just take courage, desire, and a time commitment. And it's a piece at a time. You're not going to become a financial expert. I don't think I know everything. One of the people that's on this call, that is a family member of mine. And, there's some things that she's been doing that I'm like, okay, I want to learn more about that. I've done a little bit of it, but you've done more of it than me. So, be open to discussing with people where your financial weaknesses are, your financial education weaknesses are, and allow people to be your support system and help you learn and grow in whatever areas. And then you go from the small things like just budgeting and savings to buying a home or buying stocks or, whatever your tolerance is and whatever your budget can afford. But you just have to start somewhere. So I would say if you are in a relationship where, your partner or somebody else controls the finances, please, please, please start taking baby steps to learn and to grow your own financial education.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Maria and then Rachel after.
Perfect. Thank you. So I love what I always say because I actually work in a bank. So a lot of what I see is people who either don't have the knowledge. So it's so easy, like how you said in a same-sex relationship, to just give the role to the male, right? And I think for me, I've kind of learned through experience that how I mentioned earlier, like I was a single mom, so I kind of had to learn all of that by myself, make a few errors, things like that with finances in order to learn and get to the point where I'm at now. But part of my current relationship, my marriage, that was a huge thing for me, communicating that before we even got married, of how finances are important to me. And my husband's not financially savvy at all. So, but it still has to be a partnership, and both parties should still know where the money's going. And there's so much importance to that. I can't tell you how many times I run into people in my job who are, one, getting a divorce, or two, separating, or something tragic happened in their family and they have no clue how to pay their bills, where the money is, if there is money. And those are obviously all tough situations and conversations that are a little bit uncomfortable, but we need to have for obvious reasons. So I loved how Ayo said, just like taking baby steps and learning. There's so many free resources out there, your bank, your bankers, your online, there's YouTube videos of even just the smallest things, learning what a checking account is, learning what's the purpose of a savings account, learning how you can make money if you have money in a savings account that's not earning money, learning other ways to make money, how Ayo said, whatever your tolerance is, whether it be a CD, stocks, bonds, whatever it might be, right? There's a ton of options. So I think just like taking that first leap of learning about finances really is important in order to manage your finances as as a couple or in a marriage, or whatever the situation might be with a partner. So you're never left in the dark of what's really going on with the finances. It's a hard situation to get out of when somebody doesn't know what's going on with the finances, and it wasn't a good situation that was being handled with the finances.
And over to you, Rachel.
Okay, so at risk of sounding like a broken record, I also was a single mom, and so I had to figure things out by myself. I made the choice when my daughter was 4 months old to take on single motherhood. So I was married and I did have a mortgage, and things just happen in life and you have to make really tough decisions. And at that point, one of the hardest parts of that decision was the financial uncertainty of having somebody no longer live in my house that was contributing financial to my household. But just like in anything else in life and anything else, you know, with kids, you have to be able to be strong, take that stance for yourself, and learn how to navigate it appropriately. Maria said there are just numerous resources out there for anyone to get the financial help. I know a lot of situations where the woman is the person that handles all the finances in the household because the men aren't good with money. Same with my relationship, right? So my partner, when I met him, it was just as long as I'm paying my bills and doing what I need to do, like, let's go out and let's spend. He had no idea what budgeting was. He had no idea what needs versus wants was. But the most important thing in our relationship, and I don't think it matters if it's a man and a woman or a same-sex relationship, the most important thing is sitting down and having those conversations together and being able to navigate that. Just like in a relationship or a marriage, every day you wake up and you make a choice. You make a choice to be with that person. You make a choice to compromise for that person. You make a choice to be better than you were yesterday. I think that finances are very similar, where you have to make choices every single day. But as long as you have the communication there to be able to navigate through those things, that's what's going to make it important. This whole woman empowerment movement that has come out in recent years, I think has just been a complete godsend, because now we're getting the strength, not just for ourselves, but from the community around us. From things like this, a webinar for America Saves Week, where all of us women are coming together and talking about money. We're talking about finances. We're talking about motherhood. We're talking about things that were never talked about before, and we're supporting each other through that movement. One of the really big things that's going on right now, especially in a financial world, is loud budgeting. It's trending all over TikTok. I did a newscast a couple weeks ago on it. And that's something I've been teaching in my position for years, even back when I was a branch manager and I was counseling women that were coming in. It's important when you go through journeys, and money and finances is a journey. To be able to talk about those things, to get people in your corner that are going to hold you accountable for things that you want to be successful in the future. So talking about them, getting your partner in the mix, getting your children in the mix, makes it so that you can successfully navigate those things together, and you'll be more accountable for those goals in the end.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Bria, I'll send this next one over to you first, and then go to Rachel and then Io. So how do you address building generational wealth, especially when the wage gaps for women and women of color are vastly different than those of men?
So this is a good one. I think even just setting up generational wealth in itself is a interesting topic, right? Coming from somebody who I think my parents will probably just leave debt, honestly. So generational wealth is something that's super important to me. And I think a lot of that goes with what a lot of this conversation has been, is budgeting, living within your means, because there's this misunderstanding that it's not attainable for everybody. And that's very not true. I can be completely transparent. When I was a single mom and bought my first home, I was only 21 years old when I bought my first home as a single mom. And a huge part of that, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was, I think, still considered low income. A huge part of that is knowing how to reach out and get the right resources, right? Like, if building, for example, there's different ways to build generational wealth. You could do it through investing. You could do it through real estate. There's a ton of different ways, right? But for me, real estate was like the most attainable at the time. So I went out and found different lenders who could help me find programs for single moms, or programs for low income single moms, or programs in specific areas. And I really feel like in that moment, I used all my resources to buy my first home. And that was huge for me, right? And setting up my daughter for some kind of success. At the time, I didn't have thousands to even put a down payment. I didn't have thousands to start a college fund for my daughter. But what I did have was the correct resources that I needed. And even with us, with a limited income, I was able to use my income that was very limited at the time and my resources and do something that was going to build start the first step of generational wealth, right? Now it's only been a few years since I've owned that home. It has equity. It's going to be paid off before my loan is due. It'll probably be paid off before my daughter even goes to college. And then that opens so many more doors, right? When you have a home and my daughter goes to college, right? I have so many options. I can put that in an investment. I can give her some of those funds from the home to go to college or to proceed something else. Like there's so many more things you can do. And that's just, I think, finding the correct resources and finding what's going to work for you and your family is going to be step one, right? There's so many different ways to build wealth, and something as low as like a CD or high yield savings has a minimum of $500 to $1,000 to start earning something on, even if it's just a little bit of money that you have. So I think for me, that was the biggest thing. And how you said, like, women of color and just women in general have lower incomes. I think a big part of that is advocating for yourself, right? If you've been with the company for a long time, or if you're learning more in a company, advocating anytime it's time for an annual review or things like that, knowing how to advocate for yourself, knowing how to use your resources, and truly knowing your worth and knowing that it is capable. You just have to have the correct resources, and it takes a lot of time. I can't tell you guys how many lenders I talked to, how many agents I talked to until I found the right agent, the right lender, how many just financial advisors I've talked to about my situation until you find the correct, like the right one for you and your family to start building that generational wealth. I think it's the biggest thing is just like getting out of that misconception that it's not possible on a low or middle class income, because it 100% is. There's a ton of different ways to just get started for sure.
Thank you. Over to Rachel.
Okay, so housing market in Arizona is ridiculous. Everybody's talking about don't California my Arizona, right? Prices are going up, and occupations like nurses and police officers, first responders aren't able to afford homes right now. They're moving outside of the city boundaries so that they can come in to the city to work, but they can't afford to live here. So I think that plays a huge part in it. And just in my work with nonprofits and counseling, I have counseled a ton of people that quite literally do not have money. They do not have the financial means to be able to provide that typical generational wealth. So one thing that's very, very important for me to relay to other people, number one, like Maria said, obviously a little bit started right now taking advantage of compound interest, even if it's only $5 every 2 weeks. As long as you make it habitual, you do the automatic savings, out of sight, out of mind, that can add up very quickly. But I think one of the things that people don't talk about when they're talking about generational wealth, because they're talking about, oh, buying a home and building this really big savings account. Number one, sign up for your 401k day one that you are able to. Take advantage of the employer match, take advantage of any kind of profit sharing that happens. Anytime that you get a raise, increase that 401k and just continue living within the means that you've already set for you and your family, unless you need that money right away. And then also, you can prepare to do all this stuff with generational wealth, but unless you prepare to protect it, it's not going to mean much. And so I think it's very, very important for people that do own homes and cars and different things like this to start a trust. Protect that wealth that you are building for your children now, so that it doesn't have to go through probate. And when you're contributing to your 401k, think about, okay, well, do I want to do traditional or Roth? A lot of people don't know that if you do Roth, that can actually turn into tax-free savings for your child. So you can do things that don't necessarily cost a lot of money now, that aren't, dealing with inflation and different things like that. It's just a different mindset to start building and protecting that generational wealth that doesn't actually take away from your bottom line or your monthly budget. Because I know there are a lot of people out there that just don't have it, especially right now with inflation so much. People are going into even more debt because they're relying on credit cards to pay for their groceries and things like that. So we're seeing that quite a bit in the financial counseling space. So just very, very important that as you think about generational wealth, you think about protecting it. And then also, just something for me, generational wealth doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. If you teach your children knowledge, financial foundations, and skills now that they can then take into the future to help them start their finances on a good note or have the experiences that they need, that can actually save them money in the long run. And it can provide for them even more than a monetary value that you would be doing by putting money in a savings account. So just a couple things, flipping the mindset and thinking of general wealth as not just a monetary thing, but as a protection thing and a building thing and a knowledge and growth thing, I think is very important.
Over to Io.
No, I think Maria and Rachel both shared a lot of things that I would really just second those things, but I would add a couple of things. You know, this one is a tough one just because you look at it as an obstacle. And I think part of it is, you know, not necessarily looking at it as an obstacle of, you know, it's a real thing. You know, I face these challenges firsthand of, you know, in corporate America, the wage gap, the differences, you know, based on whatever your ethnicity is, those are real factors. But, you know, we have to be comfortable to have the courage to speak up. You know, Maria mentioned that advocating for yourself at the time of performance appraisal reviews, things of that nature. It doesn't necessarily always turn out that you end up, you know, with something more, but standing up for yourself, it helps in its own way of you building courage and knowing that you are standing up for your own financial future. So that courage goes a long way, whether it pays dividends in the form of it really change what you get paid, or if it just gives you more confidence to know that you are serious about your financial future. So that's the first thing I would say about courage. And then the other thing that I would say, you know, I agree with really finding the right resources, knowing that they're, I don't know how lucrative they are in this day and age, but I know there was a time when, you know, down payment assistance was available. So just knowing different resources, understanding the difference in, like, if you're going to buy a house, what are different loan types? Do people understand the difference between like an FHA loan, a conventional loan, you know, VA loans, things of that nature, because they have different financial, you have to contribute differently from a personal financial perspective. So knowing, you know, what it means to build equity when you're buying a house, as Maria talked about, you know, she'll have equity when her children go to college. So really understanding why you're buying a house, not just because, you know, your house payment may be cheaper than rent, but, you know, because long term, that is actually building a form of wealth. So really understanding there are different avenues to build wealth, whether it be something simple like individual savings and compound interest that Rachel mentioned, or understanding 401k match. And don't miss the money. If you have an employer that will match, try to contribute. If you can't do anything else, contribute up to the max that they will match. You know, if you're able to contribute more, it's going to benefit you because it grows and it's, you know, it's tax free, you know, so that 401k comes out prior to taxes. So it lowers your taxable income. So you pay less in taxes. So there are other benefits, but I think it all just goes back to, for me, educating yourself. You know, you have to be comfortable getting a support system and a safe space to ask questions. So you have to decide, where is that space? Is it friends? Is it family? Is it your bank? Is it a credit union? Is it just finding some different things online that you can just watch those videos independently until you get comfortable to go somewhere and ask questions? But you have to be comfortable really educating yourself. For me, what I've always done is I've always maintained a written financial plan. Even if they're just bullet point goals, you know, you got some short term, you have some long term, but writing things down generally means commitment. If we keep it in our brain of, oh, I'm going to save this, oh, I'm going to do this, oh, I'm going to do this, we're not really holding ourselves accountable. So I have always written down what my financial goals were. And it kept me accountable to implementing a disciplined approach to use what I earned to achieve these goals. So not make excuses of, I make less than, or this person makes more than me, or if I had more money. You have to be accountable to, this is what's available to me. Where do I spread it? How do I use it? which, you know, it does sometimes mean sacrifice to balance wants versus needs. But if you stick with it long enough, you'll be proud of what you built, and you will be encouraged to build more, and you will learn other ways to build.
I love that. Thank you, Aya. Okay, so our last question, it's kind of a long one, but I'll have Rachel go first, and then we'll go to Io and then Maria. So when women decide to become mothers, a lot of times they have to take a step back from their careers. And sometimes women will even take up caregiving instead of a traditional role in the workforce. So how was your experience when you had your child? Were you able to step away from your job? Did you feel supported by your partner and your employer? And difficult to return when you eventually go back to your job? So Rachel, I'll let you.
I think every mother will say if they have to go to their job, it is extremely difficult. So as I said, I had my daughter, I actually went back when she was much younger than planned because I had been on bed rest. I was a high-risk pregnancy, so I spent some time on bed rest, and that shortened my maternity leave. And it was only about 3 weeks after I went back to work that I said I had to make that hard decision to become a single mother. So my situation was a little bit different than most, but having that support system around me to be able to uplift me and encourage me and let me know that I'm making the right choice and that I had friends and family along the way that would be there if I needed the assistance was extremely, extremely helpful. We have a couple of them on this call today, and I am forever, forever grateful for them for being with me through that. It was extremely difficult. I do know a lot of mothers that I have as friends that did have to step away from the workforce because daycare is expensive. I mean, my child is 6 now. When she was in daycare, her daycare was a little over $1,400 a month. That was more than my mortgage and HOA combined. To send my child to daycare so that I could come and work a middle-class job was more than my mortgage and HOA combined. Just like they say, don't wait to have children until you can afford it. Don't let things stop you from doing what you're passionate about. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I cut out half of the income when I became a single mom. I still made it happen, and that was through the people around me 100%. It was extremely difficult to go back, but knowing that I had that was like my saving grace. And for those that actually do step back and do the caregiving, I have a lot of them that I do financial coaching for. And it's as simple as like turning their passions and their hobbies into ways that they can make more money. So I have a friend that teaches yoga, and she'll go out and teach yoga at different events to pick up a little bit of money. I have a friend that just took up crocheting so that she can stay home with her child so that they're not spending that much money on daycare. But then she opens an Etsy shop and she sells her crocheting stuff, which is something she's always loved to do, but she's just turning it into some passive income or income that can last for right now until she decides what she wants to do. So there are options out there. You just have to be able to weigh those options, weigh that cost, weigh the pricing, and determine what's right for you and where you need to be.
Awesome. Thank you. Aya?
Yeah, no, I think those are interesting perspectives, because really, while there's so many challenges and obstacles raising children in today's world already. So having the right support system matters so much to just navigate to being a working mom. As I mentioned, I was very young when I became a mom. I was actually in my first year of college. I gave birth before spring break. I was out 2 weeks and then back to classes. So as crazy as that sounds, where most people, if you have a job and you have some maternity leave, maybe you're taking 6 to 12 weeks. That wasn't my journey, like literally 2 weeks. And I was back to it with a whole different purpose because now I had these little eyes looking at me of what are you going to do with my life? But I was fortunate. I had strong family support. that enabled me to push forward, finishing college, and to begin working simultaneously. But everybody doesn't have that. I mean, I didn't have to worry about the cost of daycare, and clearly, that was ages ago. And I have heard, and I know of people that are paying daycare prices that, like Rachel said, it exceeds what your mortgage costs. So it's tough to navigate and stay in a traditional work role without the right support. I think one thing that does help as well, because there are some hybrid schedules or work from home schedules, I think those things in this day and age will help with working moms, but you still have to have the right support system, because just as women and as mothers, we take on so much of the world that sometimes we don't even realize we have taken on. And just having the right support system and safe space, it just matters a lot. So everybody will have their own journey. If you are a mom and just starting work, or if you are a mom and you are working, it will change what you've been doing. If you did not have any children and all you've been committed to is your career, it will be a rude awakening of how much you have to learn to balance between being a mom and what's really important. You do need an income, but you can get that anywhere. Sometimes you have to be crafty about where you get it, but there's not a whole lot that you're probably going to be able to or willing to negotiate about being a mom. I mean, for me, it wasn't. There's some things that just aren't on the table. If I need to be a mom, I'm going to be a mom.
Then Maria, you're probably going through this right now since you are pregnant with your second one. So, like, how is that going to change once you do give birth and then have to go back into the workforce?
Yes. I love everything that they mentioned, because it's actually feels like my current situation, I just got out of, and now my current situation. So with my daughter, similar to Rachel, I actually decided to be a single mom when my daughter was probably a month or 2 months old. She was extremely little. At the time I was actually in college as well. So it was a very, very, very hard time financially, for sure. And how I mentioned, not everybody has to support a family financially, and even just like with childcare and things like that. I didn't have a ton of family close by that could help out or anything like that. So I actually just maximized any resource I could. So with my daughter, my situation was a lot different. Like I said, I was in college. I was in my second year of college in my undergrad. And thankfully, but not thankfully, COVID happened. So that honestly opened a ton of doors for me, because I was able to go virtual online schooling. So same as I was back to school within like a week. I gave birth to my daughter in August, so back to school season. Um, and so my classes literally started a week after I gave birth. So I was back to school online, Zoom, things like that, full time in order to keep my scholarship. Thankfully for me, a part of my scholarship had a stipend, a living stipend. I had a full ride, so I had a living stipend. So when I decided to become a single mom, I was also on a 6-week leave for short-term disability, because I did not qualify for maternity leave since I was only a part-time employee. So that was really hard. So with my 60% pay and my small stipend, I literally had barely enough for my house bills. I didn't have enough for anything else, and I mean quite literally anything else. So in that case, I maximized what I could. I got help wherever I could, whether it was WIC. Weirdly enough, I didn't qualify for anything but WIC. So I really just used my resources as much as I could in that time to I started doing how they both mentioned, like, wherever you can find work, you'll find work. I couldn't leave my daughter, but one thing I could do was DoorDash. So I started DoorDashing when I wasn't in school with my daughter. I would go while she was sleeping in her car seat, and I would DoorDash. And there was a ton of other things I would do, like online jobs, making online like projects and things for people. I even started like a side thing of helping people build their resumes. There was a ton of just whatever side gig I could find, I was doing. Then I had to go back to work when my daughter was not even 3 months old yet. I was already a single mom. So that became really tricky. And I mean, it was nice to have income again, you know. I was able to start working full time, and I was managing full-time school, full-time work, and being a single mom. So that was really tough. But how Rachel said, when there's a will, there's a way. And I mentioned as well, like if I have to be a mom, I'm going to be a mom. So I think that was the hardest time to be a mom and financially for me. So how they both said, like, there was a will. So I found a way to make it out, thankfully. And then now this second pregnancy is a lot different, right? Because I'm married now, things like that. My financial situation's a lot different. Thankfully, I'm not in school anymore. So for me now, it's a little bit different. I hopefully, or I will have the luxury of being a caregiver only now. And then my daughter already being in preschool, it'll be nice to, you know, still be able to afford her preschool and still be able to spend a lot more time that I didn't have that, like, that dedicated time for my firstborn. I'll have that for my secondborn. And I know part of your question was, how do you feel? So did you feel supported by your partner? I still don't have a ton of family close by, so that's still a little bit tough. But I think this time around, me and my partner had the uncomfortable conversations before we decided to have a second child. So my husband and I, you know, really laid down the base of it. You know, like, these are our two options. I go back to work and we pay childcare, or I become a caregiver, or even in a lot of cases, the male becomes the stay-at-home parent. And my husband basically was just like, we'll figure it out. Kind of, if there's a way, there has to be a way for you to just stay home with our baby. That's what we'd be most comfortable with. And so I think there's different ways of going about it, but I think there's always a way to pull out of. And like I said, in my first time become a mother, it was a ton of resources. If anybody's in college, there's ETV. I had vouchers. I reached out to all the nonprofits that I now thankfully get to volunteer for. And I was getting help wherever I could. And then now I'm in the position where thankfully I'm able to give back that help in some ways, whether it be volunteering and things like that. So I think there's different situations, and I've definitely feel like I'm living both. But it really just comes down to kind of seeing what works for you and your family, and making the decision that works best for your family, because every situation is completely different.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing about some of the things where you were saying. Just, I commend you first of all, but being a mom is a humble profession. So being humble enough to accept help is a big thing. So when you use the word resources, and you said WIC, you know, I forgot. Well, I didn't forget. I just didn't think of it. But I mean, I got WIC when my child was, I mean, it's a lifesaver, the money that it saves you at the grocery store on formula and other foods and things of that nature. So not being too proud to ask for or accept assistance makes a difference when you qualify, because it's interesting where the income line is for some of those services, and you're like, what? I don't qualify for that. I mean, you know, so it phases out really quickly. So if there's anything that you are eligible for, that you can apply for, that you know, can share resources with other people so that they can learn about it, not being too proud to take the help makes a difference. I can say that I built a lot on, you know, different resources and programs that I may have been eligible for because I was still in college, or because I didn't have a lot of income, and when I was low income. So I think humility just plays a big part in also teaching your kids, you know, how to be humble, and, you know, how to be accepting. If there is something that you're eligible for, use it, but use it to grow from it.
I love how Io mentioned that, because another big thing about using to grow from it, right? I didn't want to feel stuck forever. I didn't want to feel like I needed WIC forever. I needed these things. And a big part of what actually got me to buying my house was I lived in low income housing for 1 year before I bought my house. That means housing prices at that time, or rent prices for a 1-bedroom apartment, were about $1,300. When I went to go live in low income housing, that was about $700 a month. So the difference was huge. It was about $600 I could save to use for my closing costs that were very minimal because I used a program for it. So I think how Io mentioned, like, use them to grow. So I think that 1 year on WIC, 1 year on low income housing, and obviously everybody's situation is going to be different. Sometimes it has to be longer, sometimes it has to be less. Really, 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 really was the pushing force for me to grow from it and get out of that financial situation and hopefully not find myself there again. Because with the use of everything, my stipend, low income housing, WIC, everything like that, I was able to get out of it even as a single mom, which is extremely hard to do. And I think part of it, even in Hispanic cultures, especially growing up Hispanic, it's looked down upon to ask for help. I remember when I was asking for help, my oldest sister said, she's a mom, she was a single mom for a lot of years and she has more kids than I do. And she always said, I wish I was smart like you and not would have been, I wish I would have been so embarrassed to ask for help. So she always told me that. Until this day, she tells me that, like, if I was smart like you and asked for help when I was younger, I probably wouldn't be struggling financially in my 30s. And I probably wouldn't be in the situation I am now with my kids grown up. And I think it's really, really true. Like, it is a humbling experience sometimes, especially when you're raised on the mindset of asking for help is for weak. But reality, it's not. You have to be so strong to ask for help and so strong to come out of that comfort zone in order to, like, grow from it. And I think there's so much value in asking for help wherever you can, whether it be a food drive, low income housing, WIC, things like that. And how you said there's a weird way they draw the line because you're low income, but you don't qualify for a lot of things. But it's not just state stuff that you can do. There's nonprofits. There's so many other resources. There's churches. There's a ton of things that you can use to your benefit.
Definitely. All right, so we have about 1 minute left of our time together. I don't know if anyone in the audience has any last minute questions or comments for our amazing speakers. Round of applause for all of you. You're so amazing. And so thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. I see rounds of applause in the chat. Well, if no one has any questions, thank you all so much for joining. And really appreciate you spending this hour of time. And thank you to Io, Rachel, and Maria for sharing their little notes of wisdom. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.
Well, Olivia, thanks for pulling this together. I think it was an amazing concept to put together. So thanks for pulling this together.
Yes, of course. I'm so glad you all could participate. There was so much wonderful nuggets dropped. And since we recorded it, we'll see if we can hopefully get it uploaded to our YouTube page so we can share it out so more people can hear this great conversation.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.